Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Navigating Amateur Motocross. This is episode number 21, presented to you by Garmin Watches and Scales. Mr. Derek Harris, how you doing today, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. You brought it to my attention. My speaker and microphone might be off just a little bit, so I apologize, guys. Please be patient with us. But man, it's always good to see you, and I'm excited about talking to our listeners today about this idea of everybody wants to be faster. Everybody wants to have that late race endurance. For me, athletically, I think a lot of people can relate to it, but I wanted to draw a parallel in regards to how do you set it up in regards to if somebody says to me, hey, I mean, you're looking at your dyno report and you know what the motor's capable of. And then when they go out and they're actually riding it, they're saying, oh, it doesn't snap off the bottom. Or I think you've said on our show before, they complain that it signs off too early and they're not busy shifting. But um, I'm going to give you first dibs at this today. When somebody comes to you and says that the bike's not quote unquote as fast as it should be, where do you start?
Um, that's a really tough one. So if it's like something we built and I know that it runs good, that can be a big challenge because, hey, we know that the dyno report's good, especially on our really well-established packages. So if I have something that I've sold a whole lot of, um, we've had it in operation in race use, we've had success with it. A lot of people may not know that that package that they're maybe not, that they think could be better or faster or whatever, might be out there beating them right now with someone who they might think is good. So that's a challenge. In that scenario, it's like, okay, either let's make sure if your bike's been dynoed, I know your bike's right. So then from there, is there anything in the jetting? Like, it's crazy to me to think how sensitive humans are, but they are. So we had a message and a call the other day from a guy who bought one of our 85 race packages. And I think he had, I don't want to throw anybody, he had a very prominent builder prior to us, a very good builder, that a lot of people in the industry use. And then he bought one of ours. And his commentary was the kid says it's way faster than the other package up top, but it doesn't quite have the pickup off the bottom or the snap and some of these things. So he was asking, is it okay if, and I said, yeah, do these couple little changes and let's see what happens. And so those changes included going one position leaner on the needle clip. And then I think he slowed or sped up the power valve, just playing with the power valve adjuster a little bit from our base spec. I maybe was like a main jet change. I don't recall off the top of my head, but like one step either way. And all of a sudden he's like, it's a whole new bike. I'm glad, right? Like that's all that it took for you to be happy. That's awesome. But when we're talking in percentages, like every jet change you make is a 3% fueling change. Every needle position chip is say 3%. Moving the power valve adjuster in half a turn, out half a turn, it makes a difference, but it's almost an immeasurable. It is immeasurable in the dyno usually on a small change like that. So the kid is living in what we call the margin. He's living in this like 1-2% difference. And I'm glad that that's all it took for him to say it's a whole new motorcycle. But that's where I would tell people to start is let's try to fully optimize the setup for where you are, how your style is. And unfortunately, I don't know the answer to what your kid really wants. So we need to try. And, here's the window we're in. So pick this side of the window or pick this side of the window with some changes. And hopefully one of those sides of the window that is acceptable, because jetting has an acceptable, usable range. Same with power valve settings. There's an acceptable window we can play with. Hopefully within our window, it's going to get you what you want. And it's crazy. I mean, it is truly crazy to think that a 3% change one way or the other way is enough for a kid to think that amazing, not amazing, and that's pretty wild. So that's where I would start with people. And then number two is like, if it's not somebody I really know or work with a lot, how many hours are we at? What's the last time you did a top end? What's the last time you had your reads looked at? Have you played with your jetting? If a dad's like, it's what we set it at. Okay, what's your specs at? If they don't know, let's get the notebook out like we've talked about, record your settings, and then let's start working towards improving that. That's part of it. And then lastly is like, unfortunately, that's my job. My job is to make the bike as good as it can be. After that, it's like, well, let's talk about your kid. That's where I should start in the conversation. But unfortunately, that's not how the industry works. So we start with the bike and make sure that everything's sewed up as best it can be and go from there. It's kind of funny. This is funny about clients. And I don't know if you experience this because you're on a different side of things than I am. But when we sell engine packages out to people who are weekend warriors, just, not chasing elite stuff. Right. We get feedback that is like, oh my God, this bike is unbelievable, huge improvement. I mean, those are our best customers. And I don't mean it in a good way or a bad way. They're just people that like, I don't know if it's I don't understand. Okay, I don't understand. Obviously, I know that our package is faster than stock, so they feel that right away, right? They're just some local racer. They feel right away that the bike is faster, and they're like, "This thing's unbelievable," right? And you're like, "Okay, awesome." Really glad to hear that. And then they refer their buddies, and which is so funny because it's like they get this advantage over the. Usually, the call goes, "Hey man, I'm racing my local series, and I want a little more bike. I gotta beat my best friend's kid." And like, okay, and sell them the bike, right? And then the irony is, next thing you know, like their best friend calls you up. So and so bought your package, and it's unreal. And that's funny because the national scene is the total opposite. You'll sell your motor package to somebody, and we don't have currently. We're working. We've talked about this, but we don't have like a requirement of logo and a requirement. A lot of people are like, "Hey, I just got this awesome package. I'm not telling a soul. I don't want to tell my buddy that I got something that's better than them." It's totally counterintuitive. But what I was getting at is they're like, this thing's unreal. And then you get like a national level kid who they'll get something and they're like, well, it's better, but I need this, I need this, or it's better, but it can't be good enough because I'm still not beating so and so. They must have something better than me. And it's funny because it's like the two dichotomies where the local guy, the total weekend warrior guy is like, dang, I kind of think we have more bike than my kid needs now. And you're like, you probably do. And then like national kid is just never, never, never enough. I mean, you could not put enough bike underneath them to make them successful. And I think that's the challenge is I think that's where you got to go back to the kid is like, guys, you know, ultimately it's your kid in the dirt bike out there. Probably your kid will make a bigger difference than what I can make you on a motor. And I wish that wasn't the case. I mean, I really wish we could say, hey, put this motor on, you'll go undefeated the rest of the year. That would be great. But unfortunately, I think the kid is 90% of it. And if you have a perfectly good running stock bike at Loretta's, you could be in the mix of competing for championships. There's no question about that in my mind. I know that a lot of people disagree with me on that, but I've also seen on the back end people doing stuff like that. I mean, I helped a client outdoor nationals, not last year, but the year before on a bone stock KTM 250 SXF that they bought an ECU from us on. And it was the most basic of setups. It wasn't like a dual injector setup. It was just an ECU and a bone stock bike. And the guy, I think, had a best overall moto finish like an 18th. So odds are and think about that for a second. Think of what Drew Adams is doing in positions. Go think of what Enzo Timmerman was doing for finished positions. Go think of what the fastest kid in the A class at Loretta's was doing at outdoor nationals. They're 12 to 18.
Yeah.
So here's a dude who's on a true stock bike with an ECU, in race gas. Mm-hmm. He's got revalve standard suspension, didn't even have a kit or anything. And the guy's getting top 20s. That dude could go win Loretta's on that bike, right? Yeah. So that's kind of, and I'm granted, but not maybe he doesn't win Loretta's, he's top 3, right? Sure. So it's just crazy that parents, it is what it is, right? It is now, granted, I'm in the motor business, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go run stock bikes. I mean, that's not really what I enjoy, but yeah, it's really tough. So that's where we start, to answer your question in roundabout ways.
No, you answered it beautifully. And to answer your question, we run exact same parallels. We're the best kept secret, and we're kind of in a double-edged sword because when we do get results, nobody wants to talk about it because they want to keep a secret, which we appreciate. On one hand, we appreciate, they like what they're getting, but it does make it hard to get the market share. And then I'll go the other side as well. I could give my exact same program to 5 people in the class. Let's even over exaggerate the example. I could have 5 people, same height, same weight, same gender, ride the exact same bike, do the program, and get 5 different results out of it. Mm-hmm. Because you've got how much load are you working? You've got work rest ratios, you've got cadence, you've got frequency, you've got all kinds of other elements that you factor in. That's just doing the work side. Then you have, did you nail your hydration? Did you nail your calorie gap? Did you get the 8 hours of sleep? Did you get your 2 hours of deep sleep? And then you put all that together, right? Now you're looking at the individual in his or her recovery. Then you have to factor in school, work, family, checkbook, all the other elements that go into that category of stress. I want to share something with you, and I'd like to see if you've got something. I don't know if you have something you can share with us or not, but I want to share on this subject of how do we get the most out of an individual. This is something that I find very, very interesting. This is the Garmin dashboard. For those of you that are watching us on YouTube, you just go to connect.garmin.com. You use your same password that you do on your phone. But if you've got MyFitnessPal, connected. If you go to the phone, go to the three dots in the bottom right, go to health stats and go to calories. If you have MyFitnessPal hooked up, your report's going to say calories in and out. If you do not have your Garmin connected to MyFitnessPal, it'll just say calories. But Derek, here's what I want to show you. And I think it's interesting when you were talking about, how bikes are set up. Are you getting that little bit of extra, that 3% on this needle jet, this 3% on this jet, 3% on the power valve? This is a calories in and out report. This first line up here is an exact number that comes from Garmin. How many calories did you burn active? How many do you need to stay alive? Now I'm looking at a previous day, right? So this day is absolutely complete. So you can see what the total number is here. Please discard this middle one. This is coming from MyFitnessPal. There's no accuracy to it. And this little middle number right here is the number we want to pay attention to. So as you as a listener, somebody that's listening and watching this podcast, what you want to do on an hourly basis is look at what your calorie burn rate is against your consumption rate. When the day is over, right? In this case, the athlete burnt, let's call it 2,400 calories. He took in 28. 400 calorie surplus, no big deal. The reason why I say that is, let's go look at the day before. All right, here you go. This is typical. The calorie burn rate is 2,800 calories. Their total consumption is 2,300. So they're in the hole 400 calories, almost 500 calories. Now you go, Rob, that's pretty obvious, right? They burnt more than they took in. Here's the problem. In a mechanical world, this means that you run out of gas at lap 6 of a 10-lap race. You're leading, you've got a 15-second lead, but you mechanically run out of gas. Nobody would be surprised. Because the gas tank is empty, you're on the side of the track. It's very absolute. When you have days like this where you burnt 2,800 and you took in 23, you go into the negative on the human performance side. You go negative on the health side. Let's go back another day just to see what it looks like. On the 18th, okay, so he burnt 2,900 calories, took in 24, another day of 500 off the mark. So now we're 1,000 in the hole 2 days back to back, right? Not per day, but 500 per day. We go to the day before that. Now he's at 3,200 calorie burn rate, took in 2,400. So if you just do the quick math on that, let's call this 600, 700 calories on day 1, 500 on day 2, 500 on day 3. Here's the part that's so crazy to me. You could look at this two different ways. Your vehicle has enough fuel to go 100 miles. You've got to go 150 to get to the track. You don't try to drive it without fueling up. And if you look at that report, think about this in real time. You can grab your Garmin at any time during the day, hit the sync button in the top right. So Derek, if you got up in the morning and you put in your breakfast in MyFitnessPal, you had your first morning snack, let's say at 11 o'clock, you're like, how many calories have I burnt versus how many have I taken in? When you hit the sync button, it pulls all the data from MyFitnessPal, comes up with a calorie total, looks at your calorie burn rate, and you can eyeball the difference.
Right.
So let's say that I'm on my way to the motocross track. I'm getting ready to go do I'm going to do a race day simulation. I'm going to do 4:15s. And then I look at my calorie gap and I'm off by 500, 600, 700 calories before I even get on the bike.
Mm-hmm.
What do I expect to get out of that session? I'm working with a riding coach that I'm paying a good amount of money with. I'm working with Ben Riddle. I'm working with Steve Hatch. I'm working with Sean Hackley. I'm working with all these incredible riding coaches. What am I going to get out of that when my blood sugar level is already low? Probably not much.
No. Yeah, that's so this is what you would call, how do I put this for you? This is the low-hanging fruit for you, and yet it's probably the most important thing people get wrong frequently. So like without even improving their training program, just correctly doing their quote-unquote nutrition, right? There's the quality of food you eat, but there's also the quantity. It's important. You could make like I think how many times have you said this in the podcast? It's properly hydrated, properly fed is as important as being fit, because if your gas tank's empty, I don't care how fit you are, you can't go perform.
Well, think about this. My son's got a PW50 on training wheels. You have a full-blown Super Mini, and my son's PW50 is faster than that Super Mini when that Super Mini has no fuel.
This is not going to go.
Yep. Not going to go. And here's the crazy part. You go out and you do a 20-minute moto. What's the very first thing you do when you come back in? Check your fuel. You check your radiator. You check your oil. You check your chain slack. and whatever other things you like to do. Maybe you check your air pressure, etc. But you get the point, right? You wouldn't just kind of guesstimate, I think I can make the next 15-minute moto. Because now think about the confidence of an athlete. Let's say that you were, I don't care, super mini, 125, 65, vet rider. If you're watching, this applies to you. You wouldn't guess if you're going to run out of gas in the next session because the fear of you, right? You're wide open. You're coming at the face of the jump. No,
No worse feeling.
no worse feeling in the world except maybe it locking up in the air that we've seen those unfortunately funny as hell videos, right?
Yeah.
But the idea here is think about how religious we are about the mechanical. And I don't want this to sound cynical because the mechanical world is 100% absolute, right? You get to a certain point. I love the way you described it in our last podcast, people, abusing the clutch and wondering why the motor's overheating, right? You're literally facilitating the increase in core temperature in that motor. Stop.
Yeah, I was I don't think I told you this. I did tell you this. So you got a good kick out of it. I rode a dirt bike for the first time in 9 years on a track. So
Awesome.
it was, and I'm not even sure how I feel about it right now because like I have all the competitive desire still, right? But and I'm like, oh, I don't want to kill myself. So the point is though, like it was a bone stock 250F, and I rode a couple different bikes that day as well. Just some, back in the day, I used to ride everybody's bike. Like, hey, ride my bike, and I get a good feel for it. And so it's been a long time since I've done that on an actual track. So I was blown away how good modern 250Fs are. I was like on a track, they're freaking awesome. And then I'm like, really? People want way more than this? Like that just blows my mind. The bike is so good. And then like there was areas of the track you cannot on that track I was on. It's kind of a slippier track. Like you cannot go wide open. The bike just flat out will not hook up. You're going to go slower, all of the above. So wow. When I grew up on my first big bike was a 250F and it was a Yamaha.
Okay.
And, back in that era, like perfectly tuned, they were probably 7 horsepower off of what they are on what I rode is. But like, when was your carburetor? Like I wasn't taking my carburation that seriously on the 250Fs. It'd fire up and it ran, right? In Texas in the summer when it's super hot and humid, the stock jetting was really rich.
Yeah.
Probably 10 horsepower off of a modern bike, right? So like that would be a mind-blowing concept back then to be like, hey, my 250F is too much power for this track. But now it's like, hey, my 250F is too much power for this track. And that's just crazy. So it blew my mind after riding that, like going, people are smoking clutches? Like, what are they smoking clutches for? The bike pulls any RPM I want it to pull. I literally tried. I'd like lug it in fourth and like lug it in third and just to see what it would do. Yeah. Sure, you could stab the clutch to flick the RPM up a little bit, but it would still pull as long as you wanted to chug it because the EFI can do that nowadays. It's not going to have as much power if you're in the meat of the power and say second or third for the corner, but it still goes. And that just, I mean, there's no bog in the fuel injection anymore. So like coming up to a sketchy face or whatever, back in the day, you hit a face hard enough on a carburetor is like, like that was the risk for the pros and supercrosses trying to just manage their motorcycles. That's gone, I mean, and so anyway, blown away. But at the same time, it's like, why are you smoking clutches? There's no excuse. The only reason they're smoking clutches is, in my opinion, and I see it as a crux all the time. And I knew kids who did it when I grew up. They smoked clutches all the time and I didn't. But it's like, they're using it because they don't want to go as fast as they want the hand to sound like they're going. So they're going, but they don't want to go that fast. So here comes a clutch to slow down the bike and slip. And we can hear Tomac say, well, I'll use the clutch to slip it up the faces. But you're the minority of all the elite pros right now. That's not how I would teach a kid to ride. Right? So that's just, like you said, I mean, it's like slowing your, anyway.
But this is make a big free good point.
It's sweaters. When you go race, right.
You bring up a subject of conversation that I do probably twice a week, and that is, I believe, and I'm 57, right? So I remember the 1981 YZ125 that I had. When we say fall off the pipe, you mentioned the word bog. I mean, it really bogged, right? Yes. You come in the corner, the boo, you band the clutch. When we joke about staying on the pipe and we talk about staying in the meat of the power band, I do believe that the four strokes have become a lazy man's tool for today's riders. And I think the best thing that the parents are doing is letting them stay on a two-stroke for as long as possible because it does teach them to be busy on the bike.
Well, 100%. But this is where people needs to kind of wake up a little bit about bike setup. And that's your area you're talking about. I grew up in the power valve-less era of two strokes. was at that era. So like I had a KX60 no power valve. I had a KX80 no power valve. I had a YZ80 no power valve.
Yep.
And then I luckily, like right when I went to big bikes was like right when the YZ250F came out. And we had to make that choice. Do I get a 125 or do I get a 250F? And we weren't like, I wasn't trying to make nationals. That was never, I just rode on Sundays. And so me and my dad shared that bike. Literally, we both rode that. My bike never shut off on practice day. He'd ride it and then I'd hop on it and just put gas in it when he needed gas. And yeah, and it was an amazing bike at that time because they were for 250Fs back then. They're like 300 plus hour reliable, which is lucky. If Yamaha hadn't had that happen, 250Fs would have never taken off. But like, I grew up in the what you're talking about era, which is you ride a bike and you fall off the pipe in a corner and it literally bogged. And it would kind of carburation would get screwed up and it would, it'd have to either downshift your clutch.
Just say they're beating the downshifter on everybody's.
Guy tapping in the corner, he made a mistake.
Yeah.
And so that era really taught you how to shift correctly, how to use a clutch the correct way in the right times. Let's say you're dead in between gears coming out of a turn. You didn't want to be down and shift. So you would have to manage that. And that was like, I was good at that. So that's why one of the reasons I was fast at the time relative to my competition. Some of those guys more talented than me with like bike skill, like turning, but I was really good because I guess I'm just into that stuff, right? At managing, keeping the bike in the window. And so I got good starts because of that. And I was good on the track because of that. So I could manage the bike better. And like you said, now the 4-stroke's really taking that management out of the equation. And it's proof to, like I try to tell this to people, if I go try to dyno a non-power valve 2-stroke, which we have, we do it all the time. Or, we did all the time back in the day. And then now like some vintage things and whatnot, it will not take power down at low RPMs. Like you can whack the throttle and it just, like you said, it's not on the pipe. It will never get on the pipe. It cannot pull out of its own way. 4-strokes I can lug as far as they will stall, like till they idle, right? I mean, just the lowest RPM you can imagine and they'd go. So there's no excuse as a parent and or as an athlete now on a 4-stroke to say, oh, my bike bogged. No, it didn't. If it cut out, it bogged, right? You had a fuel injection issue or whatever, sparking, whatever happened. But I promise you the bike does not actually bog as in the sense of what we grew up on. And that's, to me, it's just mind blowing that they have to smoke the clutches so bad because realistically the bike pretty much just pulls everywhere. And sure, some of the 250s do it better than others. No question about that. But the power window of a modern 4-stroke is literally 6,000 RPM. I mean, you can ride a 250F from 8,000, guaranteed, will not bog at all the way to the limiter, which on some bikes is about 14, right around there. That's 6,000 RPM. On a 2-stroke, you have about a 1,500 RPM good window. Yeah. So that's, you can't, and most of these kids came off of 2-strokes. You can't tell me you can't do it once you get to the 4-stroke, right? You can't tell me that. You came off of a 65 and 85, a super mini that literally a 125 that have a 1,500 RPM good window, and you manage that just fine.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you because like you said, you could be in the worst situation in 4th gear in a corner, and if you just spike the clutch one time, as you called it, guess what? It's pulling to the stratosphere.
They're
instantly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you get yourself out of trouble, but I don't understand it. And I think that's part of what's missing. You go back and you look at the old photos of the outdoor nationals and you see the big berms, right? We call them bowl turns, but those were legitimate because if you got down in the inside, sure, there were people taking the inside lines, but you knew you paid a big sacrifice and it better be worth it. Or you had to ride like Bob Hanna where you would go the inside and then go across and try to break Kent Howerton's leg. That was the only way.
Times have changed, right? So here's a question for you, and I have a theory on it. I'll throw it to you first. Former elite athletes in the sport were bull riders. Small, shorter, lighter. So the Bubba peak era is what, 147, I think it was what Alden or whatever said they were, or he said he was.
Yep.
And you had like the McGrath. He's not a big guy. Now we see much bigger guys. I have my theory, but what do you think has facilitated that?
Oh, are you talking about why they've gotten bigger or why?
Yeah, I think the athletes are bigger. So what do you think? Not just that. I mean, we have some small and big, but now bigger athletes are very successful now. We don't have the little tiny bull riders who are at the front of the sport right now.
No, I totally agree. And I don't know, we could joke that that's because it's in our food, right? I mean, Lord only knows what's going on with that, but you're right. I mean, remember, help me out. He rode for Geico Honda, won the championship. He was like one of the tallest guys in the sport, not Leninovich. Gosh, I can visualize him. He was just on a podcast with somebody. I apologize.
He was like Geico?
It was before it was considered a Geico team, but it was the Honda 250 program. Man, I wish I could get it. For those of you who are listening my age, my 5.25-inch disc is spinning and I can't find the sector to get the name out.
Yeah.
But was kind of known to be brash, no bullshit, super nice, but would take no bullshit on the track.
Okay.
But he was at that time, I think 6'1" or 6'2",
Preston, maybe?
What's his first name?
Travis Preston?
Travis Preston.
Yeah, huge guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, back in that day, we would call Mike Bell was tall, and then all of a sudden
Right.
you had Preston coming in, and then of course we've got Benny Blossom today's, but then you don't have the Jeff Wards, you don't have that, like you say, the Ricky Carmichael. It seems like each generation.
So my theory is, outside of the food and why people are bigger, I think the bikes are so much faster now that you can have a big athlete be successful. A Mookie would never have survived in a 125, 252 stroke era.
No way. No.
And the same with how big Chase is and how big Tomac are.
Yeah.
They just flat out, the guys who won back then were the little bull riders because everything, they were power to weight was right. The bikes were lighter per se, like a 252 stroke's not as, at the factory level, they're probably similar weight, but when you were coming up through the ranks, you didn't have to have all that strength and size. And I think now even the 250Fs facilitate athletes who are capable, could you imagine actually thinking back in the 125 era and be like, yeah, I raced at 160 pounds. Yeah. That's like a lot of the 250F class now. There's no chance on this planet that you would have been successful in 125s at 160. Go look how skinny Kevin Windham was when he did race those. I don't know what he weighed. I'd love to find out from him, but he was tiny.
No, you're exactly right. To your point exactly, for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, this is a calorie burn report. And I want you to look at this horizontal bar, or look at this number over here on the left attached to the horizontal bar. This is a race day. Look at those active calories.
Wild.
More than what you burn to stay alive, right? The blue resting is 1,941. So, this athlete literally burnt 1,940 race.
Jump question.
Go for it.
It's not just riding though. So that's because you're walking around, your heart rate's elevated all day. Like you're up, you're amped up, the gait, walking to your bike and back and forth. Cause if you think about it, the active time on bike couldn't be more than 300-400 calories per moto, right?
And on average, what we're seeing again, depends on the age of the athlete. It depends on muscle mass, but in a 20-minute moto, we're seeing calorie burn rate around 400 to 500 calories.
Okay.
So, and I want that to be put into perspective, right? If you go out and you practice with your buddies and you're doing 4 15-minute motos, it's not atypical to see 1,000 to 2,000 calorie burn rate. If you're a vet rider, it's nothing for you to burn 500 to 600 calories every 30 minutes.
Right.
So
it's insane.
I've got an athlete that's in California. He went out and he did a ride session of 4 20-minute motos. He burnt 3,000 calories, 3,000, went home, took a nap, went out, and he did a 3-hour bike ride, another 3,000 calories on top of what he burns on a daily basis to stay alive.
Wow.
Now you start doing the math backwards, right? An extra large egg yields 75 calories of energy. So what I always say is take your total calorie burn rate, divide that by 75, and put that in quantification, right? If you invited me to come out and ride with you, and you said, hey, Rob, we're going to do 4 20-minute motos, and I show up with 1 gallon of gas, you either think I'm freeloading off of you or you think I'm an idiot, right?
Yeah.
I've used that example before on the show. Well, when you think about grabbing a 5-gallon pail of race fuel, and you're not surprised you go through it, right? You keep fueling up, you come in, it's half empty, you keep topping it off. When you look at that calorie burn rate, you're burning 4,000 calories. Take 4,000 divided by 75. Now imagine we had a looking glass and we know that you're going to go out in the next 24 hours, you're going to burn 4,000 calories. Take 4,000. Do you have your phone handy?
Yeah.
Take 4,000 and divide that by 75.
I'm going to give you a close answer. It's 50.
Okay.
That's not the phone. See, 4,000
divided by 75.
53.
Okay. So imagine we get up tomorrow morning and we already know what your calorie burn rate is going to be. It's 4,000 calories. And I lay up on the counter 53 extra large eggs. And I say between when you get your feet on the ground in the morning, before you close your eyes, you have to consume 53 eggs only to break even.
Yeah. 4 dozen plus. Yeah.
4 plus dozen. Now, I don't know about you, but if I eat a 4-egg omelet,
yeah, I'm
stuffed for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And that's because of the protein and the fat. So with that being said, right, what we start to realize really quickly is we're in a situation where, and that's why I like to draw the analogy of a mechanical. If you knew that you were going to run out of gas after 100 miles in your Sprinter van, your truck, your motorhome, whatever you're driving, you wouldn't try to drive 150 miles if you've only got enough fuel for 100.
That's a great analogy.
Because of the mechanical absolute that you will be on the side of the road calling for help. That's what makes us dangerous as a human is we're not paying attention to the gas gauge, but today's conversation is how do I improve speed and endurance? Don't run out of gas. But because it's not as absolute, people think they kind of blow it off until start the day with a bang and end with the fizzle. Then they're pissed off and they're calling me going, what the heck? I've been in the gym working out. I've been doing everything by the book, but I was flat on race day. It's not a fitness issue. It's a gas issue. It's a fuel issue.
And I think that we talked about this a few times now. And of course, if you're new to the podcast or whatever, you haven't heard it, but it's like, you see this all the time where athletes struggle to eat on race day.
Yeah.
They're nervous, whatever. And I think, I don't know what your strategies are there, but in my mind, part of that strategy would be, hey, let's treat practice day like race day, which means when you get off the bike, hey, here's your food. You need to put this down. Here's some water. You just have to make that part of their program on a non-stress critical day so that on a stress critical day, it's part of the routine.
Absolutely.
And I think that's, like you said, it is hard. I actually, as an example, when I was going to all the SMX rounds with Braswell and, going to each one and seeing behind the scenes on how, and I'm like, hey, you just did a 20+ minute moto. You've been up all day. Like you get up at 5 a.m. essentially, and then your race is until nighttime. And you can do your normal eating in your normal program, but you got to throw in some, I think they do some practice or, track time or whatever.
Sure.
And that's all manageable. But as soon as the night show started and you go do your moto, you have 1 hour till your next moto.
Yeah.
So basically you have 30 minutes, right, of actual break time. And the mechanic's over there doing his thing. I'm trying to turn this motorcycle around. And I witnessed, I'm like, okay, how's Caden going to handle this? And he, try to put some food down, right? But it's pretty hard to put down any, you can't put anything heavy. It's not going to work for you. And so this is just talking about mitigation, right? Like you have to have a plan for that stuff. And if you don't have a plan for that stuff, and he was kind of behind the 8 ball, in my opinion, he's, figuring it out through the nationals and stuff. But until it smacks you in the face, how often in amateur racing do you go put out a 35-minute outdoor national effort and then in 1 hour's time, you have to do it again? That doesn't happen in amateurs. We might have a 20-minute or a 10-minute and then a turnaround and a whatever, but you know what I mean? So you really have to plan this stuff out. And I think that the earlier we talked about that you can start that and get that habitry in place and what works for you, figuring out what the kid can eat, what they can't eat, the energy fuel, like you said, you have different varieties of that tuned for their output effort. You got to figure that out. So, what's your advice on that?
Well, you hit something that's very, very important. And that is, first of all, amateur racing is difficult because we don't know if they're going to start on time. At least with the TV deal, when they need that first gate to drop at 7 p.m. Eastern time for TV, it's going to happen come heck or high water, right? So in regards to nutritional timing, that's what we refer to it as. It's actually much easier than an amateur race because we might have a listener that might have 14 minutes between the first 2 motos and 7 hours between their second and their third moto. We've seen it.
Yep.
Right? So from a nutritional timing standpoint, it's difficult. And then you brought up something that's very important for the listeners to pick up on. There's an inverse relationship between food complexity and heart rate. So when you go to bring your heart rate up, what you put in your stomach needs to be very easy to digest. So that's why we created energy fuel. You need to have a minimum of 2 hours to digest and purge. Well, you may or may not have that window. So we've got to find something that's got a guaranteed ability to provide energy. No surprise that the product's called energy fuel for this exact conversation. But it goes back to what we were saying earlier. How many calories are you burning total in a day? And you better come up with a strategy to try to bridge that, and you better practice it. We refer to it as race day simulation, because heart rate, average and max needs to simulate what you're going to do on race day. The time in between motos needs to be like Loretta's in August, easiest race of the year to get ready for.
Hey, you know the schedule. Yep.
They start those gate drops. Unless somebody's, down on the track or they're waiting for a helicopter, those races fall like clockwork. And it's actually quite easy because, okay, 2 hours before my gate drop, that's my last square meal. It gives me 2 hours to absorb, go to the restroom, get ready for the next moto.
And we've talked about this though, but if you've got that 7 a.m.,
yep,
then you got to be up at 5.
Yeah, it's an early wake-up call.
Yep.
And what's astounding to me is we'll have parents that'll say, well, little Johnny doesn't like to get up in the morning. Yeah, but remind little Johnny that you spent $30,000 this year getting to Loretta's and it's always the same. I don't want this to sound cynical, Derek. It's always the same frustration. We went in tied for a championship 2-1 on Saturday, but Johnny didn't want to get up and he shit the bed because he got tired and we lost the championship. That could have been avoided. Sorry, could have been avoided.
And I hate to say it, but when you go pro, guess what? That's a rough schedule. I have to say, these pros are they get more credit than I ever thought they have after trying to chase that circuit a little bit. It's like, I'm not even racing and I was tired.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. People don't realize track walks is 7:30 in the morning. So you're leaving the hotel. If you go get breakfast before you go to the track, maybe 6:15, you're scarfing down food, mandatory track or riders meeting at 7:30, track walk. Then when I was working with Duns, right, we were on the podium. Oh, you don't get your trophy and go home. Everybody bails into the rig. You've got, like when I was working with Dunge, it was myself and Dunge. It was Roxon in Alden. Carlos is in there. Frankie's in there. Roger's in there. We didn't have Ian Harris at the time, but WP Suspension was there. Dunlop was there. In that little room, in that little lounge, we didn't get out of there. I remember going to A1 with him. We didn't get out of the rig until almost 1 o'clock in the morning. And we were there at 7 o'clock for track walk.
No,
Like,
it's a brutal day. Like, especially, I mean, it's brutal. I did like I said, I did a six or seven in a row, something like that, for the outdoors and then SMX, and I was completely exhausted by the end of that 7-week stretch. And that's not that the pros are doing 34 now or whatever it is. Plus that, so I mean, it's phenomenal. It's unbelievable, but people, you got to understand, little Johnny don't like getting up early. Well, you want to be a pro. There's no way around it. Because then that half the time they have these press days at 4 or 5 in the morning at the
literally,
you got to be riding at 5 in the morning. So
literally,
yeah, it's you better figure it out. Like if you can't figure it out and be adaptable, you're not going to make it.
Well, and let me share my screen real quick for those of you that are watching us here on YouTube, because one of the things that is interesting, we talk a lot about, hey, did you rebuild the bike? You just said it yourself, Derek, right? Everybody's trying to get the bikes fixed before the next moto or getting them prepped or whatever you want to call it. Well, when we come down to this is a full week sleep report. And what I love about Garmin is Garmin will tell you what your needs are. This fluctuates based on how much stress you're putting your body under. So when you see it in green, it tells you that you've surpassed what they're suggesting that you get in, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when I say suggestion, it's not some ambiguous number. It's based off of how often do you train, how hard do you train. It factors in all of these variables. It also, when you set this up, you can say, hey, I want to try to get 8 hours of sleep. It factors that in as well. So when we come in and you talked about the idea, hey, those mechanics nonstop, practice is over. They've got 18 minutes for the next time practice. Boom, or not a lot of time between the, opening first moto. You got to go to LCQ. You got to get turned around from LCQ, get ready for the main event. When you come to this 4-week report, you better see more green than you do blue, because blue is insufficient amount of work or insufficient amount of sleep. When you come up here and you look at this on a daily basis, when you come down here, this is very, very important report. You see, this is your total hours of sleep. You want this, we call this the sleep ratio. You want this deep sleep number to be closer to 2 hours and this be less than 10 minutes, right? And the reason why I think this is so interesting is, what would you say is the best scenario? And I know that, again, 5 riders, probably 5 different rotations, whether in Florida sand or whether they're in Georgia clay. Obviously, the wear and tear is a little bit different. How much comes through the air filter, how much gets in there, tears it up. What would you say, like when somebody is saying to you, Garrett, the bike's not pulling the way it used to, and you said at the beginning of our conversation, how many hours do you have on it? How many times, and this is not to call anybody out, obviously we're not asking for first names, out of 50 people that will call you and say the bike just doesn't seem like it's snappy, how many of it is because they didn't realize how many hours they had on the motor already?
That or their expectations of hours is off. And then they have a hard time believing that they should do it as often as they should. So I back up to my era at the pro level. It was not uncommon for the 125 class at pro to do top ends between motos. It was not
in between motos.
In between motos. It was not uncommon at amateurs for that to happen at the elite level. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The further back you go, it wasn't just uncommon, it was practice, meaning every team did it. And that's because we've talked about what break-in is or isn't previously, but now manufacturing's to a point where parts are machined and engineered in a way they fit. But back in the day, they had to wear themselves into each other, meaning they were an imperfect fit when they came out and they had a little break-in time. But also back in the day, let's just say ring technology wasn't there and plating technology and heat and all these things are a little bit different. And so your parts just took a little bit more abuse. And so they would have to be changed for various reasons. But part of that was not just if will the part fail or not fail, it was performance. And essentially over the course of a moto, you might give up in that 30 minutes of abuse at the pro level, you might give up a half a tenth or 2/10 or 5/10, half a horse. Hey, we're a factory program. We want to win. We want to win. And to the team, the parts are probably free, but let's say it's $50 it costs for a piston. They're doing it because they're there. We talk about opportunity cost. So I agree. I would say it's pretty common. Like it blows parents. Like I get guys in like, man, I only got 30 hours out of this crankshaft. Like I have a motor in the shop now, a local guy. Don't know how he heard about us, but he blew up a 105 that he had built. And I believe it was just a stock bike. They put on a 105 kit. And for some reason, if I remember right, it went 30 hours. He's going, man, I really expect to get 100. That's what we've gotten in the past. I'm like, well, let me ask a couple questions. How old's your kid? Happens to be a female. Is she getting faster? Oh, she's getting way faster. Is she starting to rev a little bit more? Oh, man, in the last year, she just really, really ripping, really revving a lot. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, a year ago, she didn't put the abuse on the bike that she does now, so you could get the 100 hours. But now she puts way more abuse on it, and you left an 85 to a 100 or 105, so the piston weights up, and it's harder on the rod. And let me guess, what do you mix at? Oh, I think we're mixing it 40 or 50 to 1, whatever they said it was, which is kind of sort of suggested, from the KTM side of things. Well, guess what? That works great when you're not getting pretty fast. But as you get faster, all of those things compound on each other, and now your hours drop. So for him, it would just be blasphemy to put a piston in it at 10 hours. But now you lost a crank at 30. And I'm like, well, you should have been 3 or 4 pistons deep and you should have been looking at it. You know what I mean? And he's like, huh?
Yeah.
And of course, my world is that world. I'm like, hey, if a dad asks me how often should I do a piston? I'm like, well, how much money you got? I mean, you want to do it every race? You can do it every race. It's not going to hurt you. Now, do you need to? No, I think ultimately, I think anybody who stays 5 hours and less will keep very close to peak performance. And that's essentially good enough, right? There's always the good enough. Now, if you want to go push those 10-hour intervals and you show up at a race and your bike has 9, I think that's like, well, your bike won't break, but what are you here to do? Now, if you're like, man, we're 10th place kid, that's fine. But if you're like, hey, we're battling for first and seconds, it's like, I mean, what's $100 and $150, $200 labor, whatever it is to freshen that up. And while you're in there, you get to look at stuff. And that, to me, that's so important. Like, we're not working together anymore, but the Lesher Supercross thing over the last 3 years, I mean, they would just go race every round and that motor wouldn't get torn down at all between rounds. And so there's certain things that like you're going to catch after 4 hours of runtime or 3 race weekends or whatever it is. By tearing it apart before a problem occurs, you got an opportunity to look for that. So to me, like that's why the teams do it, because they're trying to prevent issue. The opportunity cost is high, but also if you're at that nth degree of power, then you've got to live on those, it's not a truck. I don't know how to put it to people, but these little race engines are unbelievable how powerful they are. Like if you really were to extrapolate out what your 85 makes in car world, that'd be like a 2,000 horsepower Corvette.
Yeah.
Like naturally aspirated, no turbos, right? Like it would just be an unbelievable engine. And so you have to kind of understand that, yeah, we abuse them. We take them for granted. This is just how it is. But from an engineering perspective, these little things are tuned up to the max. They're pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at that. Like I'll hear somebody, I'll use a super mini rider, he complains there's not enough suspension. I'm like, your suspension, you have more travel than David Bailey's RC500. So I don't really buy into that too much. You know what I mean? You brought up something that I'd like to elaborate on just briefly, because then I want to talk about looking at the radiator. And that is, I find it fascinating, 10 hours, 30 hours. And yet nobody's surprised that a bike that has 30 hours on it is going to lose power. And what's the very first thing they say? I need to rebuild it. A mechanical, if I bring a motor to you that's tired at 8 in the morning, and by 5 in the afternoon, I've got a completely rebuilt motor, I pick up, how many horsepower would I pick up? If I bring a bike in that's got let's just go even numbers. I have 50 hours on a bike. How much is my horsepower loss on average?
Yeah, on a two-stroke, I mean, you should, if it was truly not serviced and neglected, you could be down 2 to, depending on the bike. I would even say 5, depends on crank seals and how bad the piston's worn out, those things, but it could be significant, and not just the horsepower, like the dyno number, but like how it runs. When you have all this ring leakage and whatnot, the throttle response is terrible. It just doesn't run right. We've all heard those old clapped out bikes in those Instagram stories and stuff. They sound horrible. Yep. That's essentially what your bike's going from great when it ran good towards. The more you run that thing, the closer it's going to sound like that clapped out 1975 two-stroke, because that's what's happening to your bike. It's losing all of its crank seals, and it's losing its piston ring seal, and its reeds aren't sealing good. And of course, that crank's getting loose and wobbly, and the bearings are wearing out and getting rattly and wobbly. And, I mean, think about like a ball bearing. If you start looking up specs on ball bearings, you'll be very hard pressed to find actual ball bearings in the sizes that we run them. Let's say maybe a 2-inch OD and, a 1-inch ID, something like that are rated for 15, 16,000 RPM. That's what your little 85 and Super Mini are hitting every time the kid holds it wide open in the air. Every single time. They're just zipped up 1,000,000 RPM.
Yeah.
Go actually ask a bearing manufacturer for something that's like rated for that. It doesn't really exist. They're like, well, it'll work, but we can't guarantee infinite life.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you rebuild your bike, because they could say, oh yeah, it's rated for 7,000. I mean, it'll last forever. Okay, great. But what about 16? Oh, well, we don't have that part. And it just doesn't exist because the part will eventually wear out. And that's just one of those things, people just don't think about that. It's like, well, in aerospace, it's like, yeah, aerospace isn't turning very many things 16,000 RPM and dirt on the track. And so that's that, there are applications, don't get me wrong, turbines, but they usually don't use bearings. So, that's
what's astounding is look at what you just did though. You put the loss into numbers. It's going to be a 5 horsepower loss. It's going to be a 22% inefficiency. And then you factored in things, throttle control or throttle response, et cetera, et cetera. Isn't it fascinating that when you look at the idea of mechanical, we can immediately start to quantify it? Well, let's take that and put it in human performance, right? Because if the bike has 2 hours on it, go with me here just for illustration purposes. You dyno a bike and it has 35 horsepower. If you put 2 hours on it, it still has 35 horsepower. You put 4 hours on it, probably still has 35 horsepower, right? A human body that's tired, it can lose up to 35 to 40% of its endurance and or strength. If I'm 2% dehydrated, I could lose up to 40% of my endurance. Forget sprint speed. Sprint speed is gone almost immediately. So what's fascinating is do the math, right? If you're putting in, let's just go for even numbers. If you're putting 2 hours on a bike a day, you're fortunate enough to ride 5 days a week. That's 10 hours a week. Within 3 weeks, you're going to have to put a new piston. The human body, it has to be rebuilt daily. Because if I get to the point where I've got some kind of a fatigue-related disease, Epstein-Barr, Addison's, chronic fatigue, what is your athlete complaining of? What are you complaining of as an athlete?
Well, you said something to back up, and it's like, I think people take it for granted. You just understand this. I do now, but I didn't, if I didn't listen to you, wasn't part of this podcast, I wouldn't know. You said, well, the human body's up to 30%, off on this and this and this. And I mean, what people don't understand is this is true, real hard studied data. They say, hey, we're going to intentionally dehydrate these humans, and then we'll just go quantify their performance capability. And you just spat out the numbers. But like, it's hard for people to grasp that. And I think it should be emphasized. That's why I'm just saying, it's like, hey, if you do not optimize what you're supposed to do for your body, not only will you be less, perform less well, but additionally, there's actual metrics that can quantify that. Because ultimately, we've talked about this, your body is like a dirt bike engine. It actually functions very, very similarly. We convert hydrocarbons essentially to power. Dirt bike engines do the same thing, right? And so, we use oxygen and that helps us produce power, and it comes out as CO2, like all those things. And I think it can't be glossed over, but the way you worded it was so great. Daily rebuild.
Well, it's imperative because mechanically, it's kind of interesting because if you run out of gas, it's absolute. On the mechanical side, you can get, in the physiological world, we call it residual fatigue. The fatigue you have on Friday after going to work, taking care of your family, going to school, doing a job, working on bike, travel, practice, cross-train, Monday compared to Friday, you're chewed up by Friday. If I ride a motorcycle 2 hours a day, brand new, I get a fresh rebuilt motor from HP Development, I've got 0 hours on it on Monday. At 10 hours on Friday, it's still, the margin of loss is pretty minimal.
Hey, well, by the way, it's a good analogy because I'll tell you right now, what's the best feeling in the world on a dirt bike,
Nothing better than a fresh bite.
right?
Yep.
You go ride it 10 hours, so 2 hours a day somehow, which is a lot, but people do it.
Yeah.
And you were to hand and say, if you were to give me this 10-hour bike and I just gotten it and I had a brand new one in a 10-hour bike, I'd be like, yeah, it's really awesome. Thanks. But it don't feel nothing like that new bike. Like just
That's right.
none of it is the same.
That's right. But what's interesting is the way that you are able to give the mechanical loss, right? So now all of a sudden, like you say, maybe things are starting to wear a little bit here. Well, then the domino affects throttle response. And so what's interesting is, as a human being, let's say that you're out racing, and go with me with just numbers. Don't compare them to your own numbers. If you're racing at 185, 190, and then all of a sudden you correlate that against a lap time. Let's say that we could keep all variables constant. You're running a 185 to 190 heart rate, 2-minute lap time. When you're dehydrated, your lap time will be at a 205 to a 206 at that same heart rate, because the body is working harder because it has less oxygen because it's dehydrated, something we've spoken about previously. So stop and think about that. You have a motor that's tired, that's working harder than it should to go fast. The human body is the exact same way. The crazy part is we're more sensitive than the mechanical. The results, unfortunately, are not as absolute. So, for example, the motorcycle runs hot. It'll still run, maybe not quite as powerful, maybe not as snappy. When the human body gets overheated, this body's self-defense mechanism is it will slow you down. You won't stand as much as you should. You'll hit the brakes earlier than you should. You'll get on the gas later than you should. It's actually in our neuroscience. It's a
great way
self-protection.
to put it. I love this analogy. You have to rebuild the body every day.
Every day. It's
And I hadn't thought of it because if you don't,
optional.
then you end up in the chronic fatigue issues.
Well, think about this. On the human body, let me share the screen real quick, because this is super important.
That's great. I think you should build that as a shirt, Coach. We should make this part of our first podcast shirt. It'll be rebuild it every day. And I'll even put the motor side on that, because that's how I would do it if I could do it.
Yes. So let me just see if I can find something real quick. So please bear with me. Let me move this so I can get to. All right. So this is a body battery. Think about this just like your phone, right?
Is that you?
I'm sorry.
Is this you?
Oh, this report?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Okay. They got pretty good charge. I'm not so lucky.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I wanted to share this is because we looked at their calories. That's why I wanted, this individual's doing a good job of keeping up of MyFitnessPal.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want this to be insulting, so please be patient with me. If you can see this pop-up screen, right? This athlete on November the 8th started his body battery at 100, and he burnt 95 matches. The 5 is the lowest that Garmin will ever give you.
Yeah.
So literally he went through all of his matches. But let's just do the math on it. He burnt through 95 matches. Well, the next day he starts at a 59. If he has the same amount of load on his body as he did the day before, I'm not trying to insult anyone's math skills, but he burnt 95 points here. If he burns 95 points here and he's only starting at a 60, he's already in the hole 35 points. Look at this on an integer line, right? If you start at only a 59 and you subtract 95 points, how deep in the red are you? You're 30 points in the red. Well, that's Monday. Then you come to Tuesday. You know that you're going to burn 90 points, but you only started at a 20.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you're in the hole another 70 points, and it's only Tuesday. The next day you wake up, all the demands of the day, work, family, job, all the stuff that you balance. You wake up at a 74, you burn another 90 points. You're another 15 in the hole, and now we're at Wednesday. Stop and think about that over the course of a week, a month, a year, right? Because you got an hour meter, and how religious are our listeners to an hour meter? I know
some of them are very good about it. Yeah.
Well, to me, I'm such a tightwad. I'm like, if I don't watch an hour meter, that's going to cost me big time. Forget, I mean, not to mention, last thing you want is for it to let go. When does a motor let go? Full load, no load, right? Right off the face of a jump. So the idea here is I'm looking at, once you start getting into the negative, now welcome to the world of chronic fatigue. Epstein-Barr, Addison's. How the hell did we get here? Just look at what your calorie burn rate was against what you took in. Look at your sleep quality and quantity. How much deep sleep did you get to awake time? How many total hours? Now, again, I don't live in a glass house. I know it's difficult to get 9 hours of sleep, 8 hours, whatever the bottom line is how long do you keep going before you realize you can't? And that's usually when the doctor says, congratulations, Mr. Harris, you now have Epstein-Barr. I'm going to request that you please sleep 9 hours a night and please eat 3,000 calories a day, which, by the way, they base it off of what we just looked at.
Right. It's funny you said, well, when I got the Garmin, I'm glad I did because we talked about this. Like I was just grinding too much and I didn't realize that and what happens there, like you said, is you get the deficit. I don't know the science behind it. I just knew that even when I did get okay, I may focus on some rest. Wow, I'm just not, it took me like multiple days of good rest and to really start to get charged back up. And then once you get your charge up on the Garmin, it's easier to maintain, right? But if you go into that quote unquote negative you talk about, it's not really showing you on the Garmin you're in the negative, but it's obviously easy to deduce. You're like, oh, wow, I ended the day at 0 and I woke up at 20 and now I'm at 0 and this has happened for 4 days in a row, or I'm not charging at all, which can happen if you really get down in the negative. You're like, crap, and then you realize, for me personally, I'm sure his body's different. It takes me like, if I really burn myself out, it takes 3, 4, 5 days of what I would call crazy light days to even recover. And so I think that's people don't understand that load adds up on your body. Like you said, it's cumulative.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. When you're looking at an hour meter, it's cumulative hours on a bike. On the human body, we look at it as cumulative fatigue. So your inability to bounce back from yesterday is just, you put yourself into the negative. And unfortunately, because we're human and not mechanical, we still keep functioning. We're just not functioning.
Quote unquote have to, especially the way we work here US, right? Like my client doesn't care I'm tired.
Right.
So.
Well, and I've got an individual that was kind enough to hire us 2 years ago, and his body battery was never going above a 50. Now he's above 90 to 95 on a daily basis. But we got to a point where all he could do was go to work, go home and take care of his young son. And he would race every other week because he's an off-road guy. He'd race every other week for 2 years. It's taken us that long to get his body battery back. Because like I always say, unless you want to, sell your business, get rid of your partner and put your kids up for adoption, those stresses are there. We got to work with them. Check this out. This is, we were talking a little bit earlier about looking at the radiator on a bike on a regular basis. And I want to share this with you because a lot of people don't realize this. This is the same athlete that we were just looking at. I want you to look at these numbers, right? He gets your goal every night when you go to bed is to be 3, preferably 5 pounds heavier when you go to bed. Right? Your morning number shows us inflammation and swelling. Your evening number shows us whether or not you're hydrated. So check this out. This individual goes to bed at 127. He wakes up a half a pound lighter. Usually it's about 2 to 3 pounds.
What's that telling you?
Well, here's what's so crazy, right? In this case, he went to bed at 125. He lost almost a pound. You get down here, right? You get your evening numbers. He went to bed at 128, woke up at 126. This is how much water you lose when you sleep at night.
Right.
Now people get all pumped. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. Today I lost 4 pounds on the scale. Congratulations. You're dehydrated.
Right.
Do that on Tuesday. You're more dehydrated. Wednesday, you're more dehydrated. By Friday, they sold you a book, South Beach, Atkins, Zone.
Right.
All these, right? What do they guarantee? You're going to lose 5 pounds in the first week. And all they do is they chronically dehydrate you. You look at the scale, you're like, woohoo. The problem is a cell membrane, when it's dehydrated, carries less oxygen. So now you're working harder to try to go easy or go fast. So that dehydration that you see on the scale, unfortunately, is making it harder to go fast. Now you put yourself in a vicious cycle. There's cell membrane is dehydrated, so it's small. The muscular demand to go fast is still the same. So the heart rate artificially elevates to try to meet the oxygen demand of the muscle. So now your heart rate's artificially elevated. You lose more water. You lose more electrolytes, which puts you into a deeper state of dehydration. And you're a hyper-competitive athlete, and you're pissed off because you're going backwards. So what do you think? I got to start training harder on Monday. You're dehydrated. And then we go to your radiator. If you know after a moto, it should be down 3 millimeters, whatever. Again, please forgive me for my lack of ignorance, lack of knowledge in the specificity of radiators. But if you opened it up and there's 90% empty, you don't go, yeah, we're good. We'll just put more in. What do you do?
Yeah, just go ride. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. You better start looking for a radiator leak.
Yeah.
Because the next moto is probably going to leak again.
I think I love these analogies because it's the body's much harder for people to grasp because the signs are not so obvious.
Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge because we are so adaptable, meaning your body can function low on food. It can function dehydrated, but the difference is just like an engine, it doesn't function 100%. But the problem is you don't really realize, man, why am I a little off today? Or why is this off today? Or why can't I, well, you're not 100% and you're not at your best self. And then of course, like we've said a million times, race day adds all these additional stress factors that make it really tough. And then unfortunately, I've said, I always say, I mean, assuming your kids kind of got all this stuff lined out, you are who you are on race day. And for some families, that's not good enough, but they don't understand that all these factors are a huge part of that. I'm glad you did the show this way today because I really like that you lined this out with those two types of analogies.
Well, the thing that I want for the listeners to take away is, isn't it crazy how we're bonded to that hour meter? We know that there's going to be ramifications. Bike's going to let go. We could get hurt. We could lose speed. It's not a skill set. It's just our bike's tired and we're just getting out drag race from corner to corner. But then put that in the same parallel with the human body. You're coming to me asking, you need a fitness program because you got beat on the weekend. And then we look at your weight before and after and you have a 7% dehydration rate. Well, now you've lost a good 45% of your strength and endurance. It's not a fitness issue. It's not a skills issue. It's a dehydration issue. Don't step over $1 to pick up a penny. And I always like to say in the mechanical world, because it is so absolute, it catches people, by the throat because they realize, oh, that's going to cost me financially, etc. When we draw the parallel back over to this side, what was today's conversation all about? How do I improve my speed and my endurance? Well, be fed, rested, and hydrated. Well, how do I validate that? Look at your calorie gap between what you burn and what you take in. Look at your quality of sleep, total hours, deep sleep to awake time. Look at your morning weight versus your evening weight. Are you properly hydrated? Now jump over to the motorcycle. Every time you get on it, you check your oil, you check your radiator, you check your gas tank, you check your chain sack. There we go. Make it that you owe it to yourself. You're a human being at the end of the day, right? When we look at how well we maintain our vehicles, how well we maintain all of our mechanical elements, we just need to put the same thing. And obviously I'm biased because it's my wheelhouse, but when you and I were kind of bench racing about this conversation, it's like, man, I want people to understand. I love, like you said, stock motors are pretty damn good. You don't want to put yourself out of business, but isn't it interesting when people are like, yeah, I'm not trying to win Loretta's this year, but I love having a bike that's really crisp and snaps and that's awesome. It makes it feel it's an enjoyable bike to ride.
I look at it. Go ahead.
No. Just from that standpoint, that's what I want to bring across is how do I get more out of my bike? Well, mechanically, you walk through some of the elements, how much is too soon, not necessary. And then when you look at the human component of it, just draw a parallel constantly whenever possible.
Well, it's like, I was thinking about this the other day about someone that we'd worked with and what they're going, whatever. And the only advice I could give young adults, and I wish I could give it to 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 6-year-olds. And it's the same advice, but especially young adults, one of them that we mentored is going the Air Force Academy route, graduated, trying to become a fighter jet pilot now. And like the more you go down what that kid accomplished, like that's the ultra 1 in a million type of people get that opportunity. That's probably pretty accurate now that I think about it. So These are elite kids, right? And then on top of that, getting the opportunities he wants to get, he's going to not only have to be the elite that he's already done, but now he's going to have to be the elite of the remaining elite. It's pretty crazy. The advice that I give like them is like to him is give it all you have 100%, whether it's win, lose, or draw. At least you leave going, that's all I had. I did my absolute best. And I think the same applies to what you're talking about body-wise, even if you're not trying to win Loretta's, but you want to be more fit. Why go ride dirt bikes? And I'm not saying speed-wise, but why go show up and have your body be subpar for your day of practice? Because to me, it's like if you show up and then you just can't perform because your body's holding you back, I know we don't all have it. I don't have a lot of time. I cannot put in a good workout program right now. I just haven't had the time. And, I put out a help wanted ad recently. Like if I can get that going, maybe I'll go back to more time. But
Sure.
long and short, like you want to show up on practice day, if you're not even a racer, and have your body go with what you want to do with. To me, that's like giving your all, making sure that when you show up, yep, the bike's got gas, it's got oil, I got tires on it, the bike's ready to go. But oh man, I got 2 laps in and I'm just whooped. I can't do it. Well, that sucks. Nobody likes to go do 2 laps at a time. Dirt bike is damn fun,
And it's dangerous. Yeah,
dangerous.
I was gonna say. Right. And then you have people that are spending money working with a riding coach, not getting anything out of it and getting frustrated and blaming the riding coach. And it's just, they don't realize they've already shown up. Like when you look at body battery, by the time you go to work all day and then you show up at the track to work with a riding coach and your body battery is at a 27, what are you going to get out of it? Your last meal was 13 hours ago because you've been in board meetings all day long.
Yeah.
Especially as a human, I'm not saying that we do it intentionally. It's just time gets away from us. And the next thing you know, we still want to go ride our dirt bike. And that's where we start to cascade that. Well, that's what I wanted today's show to be about.
I love it. Will Smith said something like, the second you, and it probably is, it's a great analogy. It's not very many people. I don't live my life this way. I wish I did. But he said something like, the day you want something as bad as your body wants oxygen, wants air, will be the day you achieve it. Yeah. Imagine if everything in life, how bad you need air to breathe and live, which you have to do it, right? You can't hold your breath forever. And your body fights for that. If I try to choke you out, you're going to find a way to try to get my ass off of you so you can breathe. And your body does that neurologically on its own. It's like, get off of me, right? It's not even a mental thought. So the same, what we prioritize in life is the way I look at it is like, what you're talking about, this guy goes to work, he works his ass off all day, clearly work's a priority to him because he needs to pay the bills and financial and what they want in life, to ride dirt bikes and whatever. And they put off the food and they put off the water. You have to make the body, like, it's little things. It doesn't take that much more time to drink water throughout the day and to eat correctly and keep up with your watch and all these things, but you got to make it a part of who you are. And I think that that's the challenge of it.
Well, think about the cliche. You either give the body what it wants or it'll take what it needs.
That's a great way to put it.
Perfect example is when a little one gets tired, when he gets sick, right? Let's say he's 18 months old, doesn't have a very good vocabulary. He's usually bounding out of bed at 6. You see he sleeps until 7:45. You're like, problem. He gets up, he's lethargic, he's moody. You're like, oh, this little guy's sick. You take his temperature, sure enough, he's running a fever. Well, isn't it funny? What does a child do when they're sick? They sleep.
They just figured it out right away.
And as adults, we do the same thing. We go till we get sick. And then what do? We call into work, we sleep. We give the body what it needs only because it's taken it from us. So, but no, man, it's a good show. I appreciate it very much. Like you said, Derek, anybody who's new, thank you so much for giving the show a listen. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. I know we've got some diehard that leave some really nice comments, DMs and comments below here on YouTube. Thank you so much. Appreciate all of you guys. Again, this show is presented to you guys by Garmin heart rate monitors and scales. Derek, appreciate your time, brother. When this drops and we see each other again, we'll already be through yet another round of holidays. So I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the holiday with your family, man.
You too. Happy holidays to everybody who's doing it. Thank you very much, Coach.
Peace. Take care.
All right, take care.